As the World Economic Forum's Davos Agenda brings world leaders and global elites together in a virtual format to launch their so-called Great Reset initiative, one discussion that may affect Canadians ended up taking place behind closed doors. I reported earlier in the week that Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland and Health Minister Patty Hajdu would be among the panelists at the Davos Agenda. As it so happened, Patty Hajdu's panel actually took place in two forms. There was a public portion and also a portion that took place behind closed doors, inaccessible to the public and inaccessible to the media. Just the type of transparency you'd want from a health minister in the course of a pandemic. Nevertheless, it's not clear what Patty Hajdu was talking about. She was discussing restoring cross-border mobility. In the public portion of the discussion, the panelists spoke about borders, quarantine, testing, and also this app called the Common Pass, which could be a global travel passport of sorts. If you use it and you insert your testing details, your COVID status, your vaccination status, and all of these other sorts of things, so that this app can be an intermediary between you and governments or you and airlines. But what happened behind closed doors, we don't actually know and never will. Now, I reached out to Minister Hajdu's spokesperson and I said, well, let's hear about it. Let's hear what she said. And I was told that, well, it's actually the World Economic Forum that decides the format. So if I have any questions, I should talk to them. I said, well, just tell me what she said. And I was told, well, because there were no prepared remarks, there's no speech that he could send me. Now, as it so happens, this may be absolutely nothing, but the optics of this are significant, especially as the Liberals try to malign anyone who asks questions about the Great Reset Initiative as being some sort of a conspiracy theorist, despite the fact that the Great Reset Initiative is a project that the World Economic Forum and those who support it are actually quite proud of. It's right there on the website, to instill a new form of capitalism, to connect the world in all of these unique ways. Well, shouldn't we in the world actually get to hear what those ways are, if not have a say in them? And that's the problem with this. So if we have in Canada no one really asking these questions, no one talking about them, and the few people who do being maligned, it allows things like the health minister going into a closed-door discussion to fly under the radar, when these are the sorts of things that anyone who values transparency in government should be wanting to see, should be wanting to unearth and shine some light on. In the public portion of the discussion, Hajdu was extolling the virtues of Canada's quarantine. She said a quarantine is the only way to know for sure if someone is infected with COVID-19. So there was no sense in her remarks that we were actually headed towards reducing this quarantine, even with an abundance of testing, because as she also said, testing is just a snapshot in time and not something you can really rely on. She was asked by the moderator of the panel about the Alberta pilot project, which lets people shrink their time in quarantine, and she almost dismissed it by saying something along the lines of, well, I mean, yeah, it's not foolproof. A test is just one moment, and basically we're just supposed to live our lives, if we ever want to leave the country, by just taking that extra 2 weeks to be at home.
With the Alberta pilot program, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the quarantine requirements can be shrunk down to 7 days, correct? If people test negative, and then they can go about and resume their businesses. How is that pilot program been going?
It's going okay. I mean, we're still seeing importation rates that I would say it's concerning to, in particular, the provincial authorities, but also to our own ministry, the Ministry of Health. It's not a perfect solution.
So the fact is, this is something that is going to persist. It's having monumental implications for the travel industry, for Canadians' well-being. And if we want to reopen the economy domestically, that also involves reopening some bit of mobility internationally. For True North, covering the Davos Agenda, I'm Andrew Lawton.